Police in Hong Kong are clearing a protest site near government headquarters. These are pictures from just under 1 hour ago when riot police charged at pro-democracy activists with batons and pepper spray. They also dismantled some tents that were being used by the protesters. The demonstrators were blocking a major road. There's anger over Beijing insisting that it must approve all candidates for the city's top post. Al Jazeera's Rob McBride is live with us from Hong Kong. He's on the line right now. Rob, when we were speaking to you an hour ago, you were right next to that area that was being cleared. The protesters were moved a couple of hundred meters away. What's the situation now?
Well, that's right. They have been cleared completely from one side of this large government complex. The road that was at the centre that was effectively the front line of running clashes all night, that has now been reopened to traffic for the morning commute. It was always timed for the morning rush hour here. The authorities were determined that people would be able to get to work inside the government building. Civil servants go to work, including, of course, the Hong Kong's chief executive. This side of that complex is where his office is. Protesters were just as determined that they would try to paralyse the government, as they called it, their latest tactic in this 2-month-long dispute. So far, the police would have to be said to be in complete control of this side of the headquarters. The demonstrators have all been moved back. Some were arrested, some were injured, and they are now being moved right back to pretty much the original Occupy site, the Umbrella Square, as it is called. That's the site right next to the government headquarters. And it is also the area, it's where all the speeches are made, where all the tented encampments are. And the police have also now taken over some of the bridges which go over the top of that area. Those are very strategically important if they are to eventually take over the whole site. Now, the police would argue that all they've simply been doing is gaining access so people can get to work, and those are one of the thoroughfares, one of those bridges are the ways that people would get to work. They could argue that that's all they were doing by this operation today. The protesters would see this as being far more sinister. They would see this as being the authorities eventually trying to do away with this main occupation site in the centre of Hong Kong, and they are acting accordingly. They're setting up new barriers. There is an awful lot of activity here, an awful lot of tension, and I'd also say fear.
Just after 8 in the morning there in Hong Kong, Rob, the pictures that we've been looking at over the last few minutes were from just over an hour ago. This operation to clear the protesters from that site began at 7 a.m. But protesters had been facing off with police throughout the night, hadn't they?
That's right. There had been running skirmishes throughout the night, and especially on the main roadway, which was at the centre of the dispute. At one point, the protesters completely had taken over that road. The police had been forced to retreat, and the police had been in control of this area of the government complex for the past few weeks or so. They had completely gave up control to the surge of protesters. Many of these protesters had come out, you'll remember, after pleas from the students to come prepared that this was going to be a new tactic that they were going to employ as a way of almost taking revenge, if you like, for the loss of some of the occupation sites over on the Kowloon part of Hong Kong last week. So thousands of protesters did come out. They started to encircle the perimeter of the government headquarters, and very quickly it turned into running clashes with police. Now, the protesters would argue that they were still largely peaceful, but it was, I think, the sheer force of numbers surging forward that caused the police to respond with baton charges, with pepper spray, and we saw some real ugly encounters during the night. Probably, I think, the worst violence that we've seen in all of the 2 months that this campaign has been going on. And been going on, we have to remember, of course, fairly peacefully. This was always meant to be a peaceful campaign, and largely it has been. Last night, it certainly wasn't.
Rob, many thanks. Rob McBride live there in Hong Kong.